as a woman watching female empowerment movies that are coming out now, it is so fucking offensive.
Yes, you can shoot from the hip. You can say mean, hurtful things if you want. That is your prerogative. So some people want to critique to be hurtful. Some people want to critique to be helpful. And as a creative type, you have to discern between that.
If that's your opinion, that there is somebody, anybody out there who should not critique your work, not only are you fucked in the head, but you do not belong in a creative endeavor.
And you go like, oh, but we have these things that we've checked off, and therefore if you don't like it, it must be because you are an awful human being, rather than going, actually, maybe there is something to be said.
This is totally your first time saying this in recording, so no one will suspect you've already said it. We said, say it again. But this time hit the fucking record button. You got this. And go. That's your line.
Welcome, everyone, to Writing Prose, episode 22. Yes. Very, very well polished machine over here. So much rehearsal. How is everyone doing today? So we've got an interesting topic. And before we jump into it, wow. Gibby with that power fist down there.
You see it?
Power fist?
It looks straight up. And he
Get that fist away from the bottom of me. I do not consent.
Terrible.
No. That's why the eyebrows raised.
I've forgotten how classy our show is. Here we go.
Right?
I'm doing well.
Gib.
I'm doing well. Thanks again for having me.
I'm glad that you're doing well. I apologize. It's been a minute for you because I feel like you've been going to all these conventions and stuff. You keep missing.
But that's it. I'm winding it down. Episodes. I'm too old for conventions.
Oh, okay.
Don't say that, Eric. I think you're younger than me.
No, I'm done. I'm all done. I'm an old man with paper skin.
I like it when Eric's done because it's like it's just because he comes back. He goes, okay, I came back.
He's like, I'm done. We're gonna do one more.
We'll edit this out. How old are you, Eric?
53 going.
What the fuck? You're like 37.
See?
You're like 30. That's it. I'm looking it up on your IMDb.
I turned 47 last month, so.
Because that's the point of.
Because the IMDb is clearly going to tell you more than Eric.
They will tell you the truth.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
It says you're 62.
Yeah, see?
62 years, 2 months, 12 days old.
I'll tell you about that offline. I'll tell you offline.
Just lists your birthday as July 16th, 1960.
Well, that's like, who did I look up the other day?
So much that I get to edit out now. Thank you, Cy.
There's this one artist I looked up the other day because I was looking at one of those old, how to draw books. Just like I had on my old collection I given my son. I think it was a Christopher Hart. So I was like, I used to love these things. I look at there and I'm like, he's 65. I didn't realize that.
So the topic for today is not actually Eric's
everyone?
age. No, because the other two are being assholes. So if you don't know who the other two assholes are, then you clearly haven't.
It's episode 22. They know. They're into it.
You should know at this point. So what we were going to talk about today was critiques and a specific, because we've talked about receiving criticism and things like that before. But what we're specifically going to talk about is something that I saw circling around on Twitter, which is who is allowed to critique your work. And personally, I have so many feelings about the way that is worded, because that's exactly how it was in multiple tweets from multiple people that I know that I've, followed that are indie creators. And I think one of the biggest things that I can say is if you are worried about who is allowed to have an opinion on your work and who is allowed to voice that opinion on your work, this is probably not the career field for you. And you should probably seek some other kind of dream, because everyone is allowed to have an opinion on anything. It's up to you to decide how valid that opinion is and how valid that critique is, and if you're going to take it to heart or if you're going to move on and say, okay, that's one person who's unhappy, or they're unhappy about what I intended to be upsetting, or, whatever in my writing, and they're voicing that they're unhappy about it. Well, then I'm a good writer. That's what I was trying to do. But the idea that you get to gatekeep who gets to say how they feel about any art, and this is, in writing, it's a little bit more accepted. In the art world, I am appalled at how many artists have said you should not, if anyone does not ask for your critique, you should not be critiquing another artist's artwork because it's subjective. But there's literally, that's one of the joys of art, is that one person can get one thing from it and someone can get something different. And if we're never allowed to talk about it, then how are you ever going to know other points of view?
I'm going to go one step farther, and I'm sorry to jump in, Shae. I've counted. It's been 16 sentences since I wanted to jump in. And you just keep breathing in mid-sentence, and that's how I can never interrupt you.
I just snot bubbled through them.
So
Please
I'm going to go one step farther and say, if that's your opinion, that there is anybody out there who should not critique your work, not only not only are you fucked in the head, but second of all, you do not belong in a creative endeavor. And in fact, you should seek serious mental health help, because everyone is allowed an opinion on everything. Okay? If it's not part of your personal life and you're not a celebrity, everyone is allowed an opinion. Now, you don't have to give a shit about that opinion. And frankly, you probably shouldn't. But if you think that anybody who is in any position to consume your work is not allowed to have an opinion, I can have an opinion about how my garbage man does his job.
Yeah.
Why the fuck couldn't I have an opinion when you start putting black elves in fucking Lord of the Rings?
Oh, this got even spicier.
It's
yeah.
gonna.
Oh, it's gonna get even worse.
So here's the thing, okay? And I was planning on getting to this in like 45 minutes when I actually do the speaking up part of the show. But I'll just whip it out and throw it on the table right now.
Yeah.
So there's this thing that creatives like to do, put in like little red herrings so they can discredit people who want to critique their endeavors, and they'll put in things like put a black elf in Rings of Power and stuff like that. So people don't understand that it's not just that was a shit decision. It's the entire endeavor that they have, treated like whatever the latest football is that they're going to fuck midfield. And so here's the thing. Okay. If you're going to treat your idea, your characters, your story, your property like shit, expect critique, especially when it wasn't yours to begin with. The other thing about that is people are allowed to tell you when they don't like what the fuck you're doing, even if it's your baby. Gib, me, Eric, I'm sure we've all gotten critiques that we haven't particularly enjoyed, that we felt were off base. I don't know, Shae, did you get any negative critiques off your story in Kill Journal?
Not off of that. The only critique I got, the only critique period I got off of Kill Journal, aside from it's good, was it was short.
Yeah, I wanted more.
It was supposed to be short, but that doesn't mean I've never gotten critiques. I got critiques all the time.
No, I meant like anonymously, professionally kind of thing.
Do you think that's where it comes from? Can we go back to the thing that Shae was bringing up?
We can go back to anything you'd like.
That sounds good. I just thought about like the late 90s.
You just thought about the late 90s.
Let's do it.
Back to like that one point in my, and it's my.
That's fine.
The thing that I was trying to bring up is like, are they saying that kind of what we're interpreting as sort of like gatekeeping language is because they're so very precious about their work, and they only want a specific kind of feedback, and some people don't know how to give it. I'm just trying to, I'm not playing devil's advocate. I'm just trying to understand, like, why would somebody say that? Why would somebody say you're not qualified to give that kind of feedback, you know, or have that criticism?
My thought process is because you have people that are incredibly precious about something that they wrote, and they feel a level of superiority in the fact that they actually wrote something, right? Like there's a difference. There's like a multitude of personalities when it comes to creative types, right? You have people that create because it's genuinely something that they love to do. It's something that's fulfilling for them. And if other people enjoy it, that's just icing on the cake. But the main focus, the main drive is for your own fulfillment. For you to know that you had ideas, you put it out there, you created something, maybe it landed, maybe it didn't. But you at least took a step where so many other people who can armchair quarterback how shit all of these shows are, all of these movies, whatever entertainment we have, it's really easy to criticize. It is really easy to criticize stuff. But if you haven't done anything, a lot of people who aren't necessarily writing for themselves, or who are a little bit precious and haven't really built up that layer of like callous, every criticism they take to heart. Every time somebody says something bad to them, they really just internalize it. And it reminds me a lot of, I've said this before, I'll say it again because it's relevant. It's a lesson I learned when I was 8. And I am appalled sitting in my mid-30s finding out how few people have learned this lesson as adults. Words cannot hurt you unless you allow them to. The only way words can hurt you is if you let them. There was actually a really phenomenal quote from, I believe it was Selma Hayek, and she's like, if I insult you in a foreign language that you don't speak, it doesn't mean anything to you. It doesn't hurt because you don't know what I said, right? So that can't get in. I know what I said. And she's like, so if that's the difference, then why are you letting words hurt you simply because you understand the person's malice behind it? Okay, maybe that person's an asshole. Yeah. Like, you're the one giving it credibility. You're the one giving it credence.
What are you saying, Sai?
Oh, the other thing I was going to say, and kind of dovetailing off of that, is the fact that I think the difference that we're seeing and this backlash at criticism entirely has to do with the fact that more recent generations of creatives have had far, far less to go through to get their work seen by people than in the past. So what I mean by that is, you know, the trope of, you know, trying to publish your book, right? And you get turned down 80 times and you just hang the rejection letters all over your house, and eventually your entire house is wallpapered in them. That kind of thing. But now we're in the age of even an asshole like me can go onto a website and publish their stuff and have tens of thousands of people read it, you know, without having gotten toughened up to criticism by being rejected so many times, and by hearing all that negative feedback from publishers or editors or things like that. So now you have this, I don't want to say fragile, but I'm going to use that word because I don't have a more apt one at the moment. But you have those fragile people in these positions to have their work seen by innumerable amounts of people. And at that point, they like Shae was saying, they don't have that callous. And the other thing that we're seeing is people in Hollywood, and you'll forgive me, Eric, because I know that you've moved in some very, you know, higher echelon circles than the rest of us. But what we're seeing a lot lately is people failing upwards just because they have the right thinking, they have the right political backing and things like that. So again, you have those people who haven't developed that thick skin because they're protected from hearing that feedback, and so then they get put in things like Rings of Power or God, just any number of spots that maybe they're ill-fitted for. Maybe they do have real artistic, creative talents, but just not for the things that they're being funneled towards. And so then they get that feedback, and it's like, well, why the fuck should I listen to you? Well, maybe because I've fucking read Tolkien since I was 5 years old, and you just discovered him last week when you got put onto this project. But
what do you think, Gib?
Yeah.
I'm honestly, I'm just taking it all in because it is such. I mean, I think we're all of like mind. Everybody has a right to critique, but at the same time, anybody who's a creative type would like the critiques to become from a place. Yes, you can shoot from the hip. You can say mean, hurtful things if you want. That is your prerogative. However, it's like owning a gun. We hope you'll be responsible when you shoot it off. But some people just want to like wave it around like a 13-year-old with an erection. Just I want to rub it on everything, and I don't care about your feelings or your consequences. And so some people want to critique to be hurtful. Some people want to critique to be helpful. And as a creative type, you have to discern between that. Rotten Tomatoes lives and dies by that. And then unfortunately, we have situations where people critique by political alliances, left and right. And it has nothing to do with quality of the work. I know, for example. I think it's been really hidden in the subtext, but Cy does not care for Rings of Power. So
you were able to glean that? I was
your critiques are like those are the things you've brought up are things I don't care about when I'm watching the show. We have the same opinion. I find it a very middling written show. It has nothing to do with the actors or what they're placed in. I don't care, but they're all Black Hobbit and they're fantastic. Do it. I don't care about that because it doesn't. At the end of the day, it doesn't hurt anything. Writing poor characters does. When you make Galadriel sit there and like get in that guy's face and it's like, I'm going to take pleasure in murdering every single one of your children. I'll leave you alive, and at the end of the day, I'll whisper in your ear, I've killed them all. You wrote a villain. That's not your protagonist. That's a villain.
That's not a good guy.
And stop trying to tell me that that's your hero because that's how you've written them. You want them to be strong and independent and powerful, but they're a douche. That's my critique of your work. And I don't exist in Hollywood, but as a writer, looking at other writers' work, I can say, if your intent is to make that person your protagonist, you have failed. Unless you want your protagonist to be a villain. Because then you've succeeded. Because you made the villain sympathetic and the hero an asshole that I actually root for their death. I watched the new Hellraiser movie last night.
So did I.
And I was and I was actively rooting for what's her name? Riley? What was the girl's name?
Riley.
I wanted her to die. I was rooting for the Cenobites because she is such an asshole.
Bad decisions.
No, but here's the thing. She's that type of person that makes every bad decision in life and gets mad at everybody else for her own bad decisions.
And she kind of learned that by the end, though.
Did she? Look, she got rewarded for it at at the end. I was rooting for the Cenobites. No.
She come on, ask the demons for anything. There's that.
Well, no, she saw that no matter what she chose would be wrong. It's a horror movie, and it's a decent remake. But the point is, everybody's allowed an opinion. Yeah, I didn't hate it. I liked it, but I hated the protagonist. She was horrible.
Gibby, let me just say really, really quickly, I agree with everything you just said, and let me kind of unwrap the onion of critique just a little bit based on what you said.
Sure.
Okay, so you're saying, I'm going to go back to Rings of Power because it's the common denominator here. So you're saying that you went directly past the thing about putting black elves, dwarves, and hobbits in there, and you focused on the writing once you were inside it. Here's my point, and here's kind of the normie take, right? And here's where I think that you and I differ. When I look at that property, okay, I understand. Let's put Tolkien's racism or not racism aside for a second. Okay. If he had a justification for the choices, I mean like an actual justification for this is the way elves look, this is the way hobbits look, this is the way dwarves look, and he explained that. If the creator then turns around, the creator of Rings of Power then turns around and says, we're not going to do it because he was a racist fuck. Okay. But tell me why in the story you're making that choice. Don't just tell me you're on a crusade to right all the wrongs of past history. because I feel like society is already doing that. So why in the story are you taking something even as recently as Peter Jackson stuff, and you can't tell me Peter Jackson's a racist bastard? Tell me why you're changing it now, because that's my hurdle. If you're going to make a conscious decision to change canon, I need to know why. And if you're not willing to ante up that little bit, I'm not even going to watch your show.
I will look at it this way. I see what you're saying. I do. And I've seen a lot of the same, videos and critiques and things like that, and from the Tolkien purists who were talking about a certain, England at the time, which he based it off of, and it was a very homogenous looking group. And most of his characters were all written, like all the elves are written as fair-haired, fair-skinned, et cetera, et cetera. And I am tracking that, whereas, hobbits could have a ruddy texture and ruddy complexion, so with the dwarves from being down deep. I'm tracking all that. But I guess my modern day mentality is I don't care. It doesn't, that level of what's the word I'm looking for? Zealotry for the source material actually can hinder you from appreciating anything else. I mean, I love the original Hellraiser, the way back in one of the 80s. It was in the book, it was a female, but they changed it as a man in the movies. Are you still outraged? No, because it's one of those, you just didn't give a shit at the time. And I
didn't even know that Pinhead was originally a chick until this
Pinhead
movie.
Originally was right. But that's my point. Is it's you can always look back on history and find fault. That's a given. You can always do that because history is always wrong, and you always learn from it because shit got fucked up. So we always think we're enlightened in the modern era when we're just making the same mistakes over and over and over. No, so when it comes to something like Rings of Power, the changing of a diverse cast, and I hate to use the word placate, but to placate like certain people in Hollywood, it doesn't affect me. Like I said, the writer in me affects me like poor story choices, poor pacing, every elf they put in there is a dick, except for Arundel, the dark-skinned elf. He was the only cool dude in the entire Elven Kingdom that we've seen in the show because he actually had like a nobility about him. Everyone else was like backbiting and duplicitous and shitty,
I guess then that brings up the question: is would it bother you? Okay, let's take Rings of Power exactly as it is right now. Would it bother you if they made that show exactly the way it is now and didn't call it Lord of the Rings?
I wish they hadn't. I wish they had just called it something else. Just call it the Second Age, or with inspired by Tolkien-like events. But
zero about their choices would have bothered me. And I would have gotten over the hurdle of them changing the source material what little source material they actually relied on, if they had called it something else. My point is, don't try to piggyback off of something while changing it, not explaining why you're changing it beyond 2022. It's 2022, therefore, right. It's like when they did Dick Tracy, right? They didn't try to change the aesthetic of Dick Tracy. They didn't try to change what kind of guy Dick Tracy was. They didn't try to change the simplicity of the story. I have a problem with remakes. I have a problem with piggybacking off of old things.
And I'm not going to say you're wrong. What I'm going to say is you're right because it's your opinion. My issue, not with your opinion, comes from like the showrunners and film and the writers we're clapping back against people with critiques online. There was a thing, right. There was an article going around where like dismissing everyone's opinion, but it's one of those things like you have your opinion and that's fine. As a Tolkien purist, you have a point of view. I enjoy Tolkien, but I'm not a purist. I'm like, I don't care about the physical changes to the actors. I only care about the story and the writing. It's the same issue I have with Wheel of Time. I had nothing to care about like making a diverse cast. I care about the poor writing. And it's one of those scenarios where clapping back against critique and dismissing it because they're just unwashed masses is stupid.
Well, and there's
they also threw. Sorry.
Oh. No, go.
I wanted to make a point to the stuff that both Sai and Gib were talking about is that both are legitimate, but one got weaponized in order to dismiss the other one, if that makes any sense. Right, and that really is shameful. That's shameful to me.
It is, and the thing that I was gonna say is this is getting into, so now you have opinions from various backgrounds, right? You have opinions from Shae, who really liked the canon, liked what Tolkien had set out and how everything was set up, and they have a problem with it because it is banking on a name without any regard for what came before it, which is a cash grab. It's a money pit. The whole reason they're doing it is just to get the money from the recognizability of an already popular thing. That's where Shae's frustration is lying, because they're doing nothing that stays within the realm of Lord of the Rings. They've changed everything.
Can I say something to that, Shae?
Yeah.
I think it's similar to what's happening with The Little Mermaid right now. I had an extended discussion about why it's pissing off not a ton of people, but some people. And in part, not wholly, it's because they spent, and I think a friend of mine, this guy named Perch, brought it up, was like they spent generations establishing as a franchise who this character, or in the case of Lord of the Rings, who these characters are. And then now you criticize people when you do the switch. That's one, right? The other one is you spent very little time establishing value for the thing that you're tokenizing. You just said, hey, we want to cross a box and say, look how progressive we are, and then changing the skin color of something while not earning that skin color. Does that make sense?
Well, like,
because if your argument from a Disney perspective is to say, hey, we're celebrating all the Disney princesses, there's a really, really great movie called Princess and the Frog that is
phenomenal.
Their last sort of like tip of the hat for traditional animation on their way out. But why didn't you do that movie? Why didn't you do the thing that is inherently nuanced in its storytelling regionally and as far as its people was concerned? You didn't do that movie. You did this one and you said, let's check this box by turning her black. And I think that's really gross. That is, like, to me, the most underhanded way of tokenization. And I think in such a way, it's similar to what's happening with Lord of the Rings. That's why people get insulted.
And
it is.
Let me just tag on one thing here. Okay. It is the worst kind of gaslighting because, and I read about this recently and it really got me thinking. And this is one of my shortcomings because they got me on this too. So right about 2016, when female Ghostbusters came out. Okay. Movie companies started doing this, and I believe it wholeheartedly. They will make these decisions to be able to check off these boxes, and they do it purposely, not to be able to fulfill any kind of a social target, really, at least not primarily, but they do it to draw fire. So I can put a black
really?
I can put a black elf or a black dwarf in my thing because that is going to draw the fire, not the shitty writing.
Oh, I see.
Not these other choices that we're making. Yeah. And that becomes the lever through which the company can then discount all the criticism. Look at what happened with Leslie Jones. Look at what happened with her. Okay, people criticize Leslie Jones saying that she was ridiculous in that fucking movie, and her acting was, but it's Leslie Jones, but, you know, it's come to expect it from Leslie Jones because that's just who she is. The same thing with Melissa McCarthy. But then they can point and say, look at those racists. You're a racist if you hate this movie.
You're a sexist, you're a misogynist, you're a bigot.
And so that draws the fire, and that's the rallying cry, and then they get people to rush to it because...
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing is you have, in doing that, in weaponizing outrage culture, which is just fucking rampant in society today. Like, outrage culture is insane. I am a white female, and I can say nothing negative against anything that has a female lead. If I don't like how they wrote Miss Marvel, because I don't like the way that they handled her, where they made it okay for her to go off and just beat a dude just for funsies, and they were like, look, we should be celebrating her. And I'm like, you fucking kidding me? Like, she just straight up assaulted and robbed a man.
Yeah,
like, that's
to
not...
Gibbs' point. You made a villain. You made
exactly.
A villain
You
and tried to
wrote a
leverage
villain,
yours.
and then you tell me to be like, yay, villain. Like, I'm not. And it was... When the Ghostbuster movie came out, it was all female cast, right? I was not immediately against it. I was immediately apprehensive.
No, I was excited. What's her name? Kate... whatever, the skinny one who plays
Kate
the,
McKinnon.
yeah. I love
McKinnon.
her.
She's
I
great.
think she's
great in
funny as
everything.
shit. I even liked parts of her in that movie. I thought she was funny, but I'm sorry, continue, Shae. The point is
the thing that really got me is I was a little apprehensive because, to me, being in society and seeing the trends continue, I was like, this feels tokening. Like, this feels like tokenizing. And then I started watching clips and stuff, and I tried. I can't watch it. The acting is so fucking terrible. The one-liners that they're throwing out there are so just...
well, and that's not what
grown
Ghostbusters
eye roll.
is.
Well,
Right.
I think what happens, the difference they were trying to compare to the first one, which ultimately I think is like really, really unfair. But they had a loose script, and the way that the Ghostbusters with McKinnon and cast, they were allowed to sort of, they were allowed to riff too much. It's not to say that the first Ghostbusters didn't do that. Trying to keep Bill Murray from like riffing and adding is,
But
like,
it was
I
a
would think it's
lot more
impossible.
subtle.
But here's the thing: the foundation, and this to Gibbs' point, when you write that movie, it was if you were to take all the quips out, it'd be a little bit less, there was a little bit less stardust on it, but it's still a super solid movie, right?
Yep.
Still
It
had
just
a
happened to
point,
be
a plot.
exceptional because these guys played really, like, they played off really well with each other. Egon knew who he needed to be and had that level of subtle humor, right?
Yeah.
But I think everybody was trying to one up each other in their delivery for this
In 2016,
exactly. And I thought, like,
Well,
that's where you guys made
Everyone
that
wanted
mistake
to be the
because
breakout.
was-
Everyone wanted to be the fan
Well,
favorite.
it's you have a situation where you in the original Ghostbusters, which obviously is going to be deified because it's 1985. It's a movie that people have loved for 30 plus years. In fact, Afterlife, while it's a fine movie, could not exist without the first movie existing. It's a love letter to the original. But that being said, the first movie, it breaks all modes of storytelling because the characters at point A and point Z are exactly the same. There are no arcs. They are exactly the same. They do not change whatsoever. It's also not written as a comedy. They tell jokes, but it's not a comedy. It is a horror sci-fi thing with jokes in it. And
supernatural.
Obviously... Right, and Vakeman is like, he tells his little quips and things like that, and and Ernie Hudson's got his jokes, and Egon never smiles, and Ray does his thing. But the next one is written as a Paul Feig comedy, and as a Paul Feig comedy, I found it to be because I felt the improv didn't work. I like him when he did Spy with Melissa McCarthy. I love that movie. I'll watch it right now. There's a few other I really enjoy.
There are Melissa McCarthy movies that I love, and I hated 2016. And the reason I hated it is because they made it into a slapstick comedy. Yes. And that's not what Ghostbusters was supposed to be. It was so fucking heavy-handed.
That's the thing. It's like we hang on, like the criticism aspects, we hang on to things of the past. I found it bad because I didn't think it was a well-scripted movie because there was no script. They let them improv, and they just kind of cobbled together these storytelling bits. And I found it to be, obviously, because they're basing it off a loose existing story. When you're saying before, look at this panel and like the quote diversity across this panel. We cover a spectrum of backgrounds. But my problem when it comes to weaponizing, you said earlier, weaponizing of outrage culture is, when you have things like, no disrespect to these websites or these people, because I don't know them as people, but when I see things like The Critical Drinker or Heels versus Babyface or Clownfish and those types, like their entire business model exists on bitching about the things that are popular. And then the comments section below are just... And I hate to use the word sheep. Have an original fucking thought. If you didn't like Captain Marvel, why? Don't say it's because it's a woman. Don't say it's because of this. Don't say it's this. Say it's because they refuse to put her in a light like they do all the male counterparts, where they all made fun. All the male leads, you made fun of them. You mocked them. You told jokes at their expense. She was like Vin Diesel. No one may laugh at me, and I can't lose a fight.
it was that. It
doesn't
was.
endear you.
It was you're telling me how great you are instead of showing me how great you are. There was no real art to her.
Tony Stark was a self-centered Lothario alcoholic man whore who, and we knew that up front, but he also, when he learned to fly, he flew into the ceiling and broke his face, and he constantly, and this little robot dummy was,
right.
And, I've said in the past, like in Thor, he's all mighty and he gets shots in the butt and gets knocked out, and Steve Rogers is a virgin who doesn't know what fondue is, he's all flustered. We're laughing at, we even laugh at King T'Challa when he's like, look at those shoes, they're making fun of him, his sister. But when it comes to the female leads, we're afraid to point and laugh at them. And
no, because look at it. It's just her. I mean, look at fucking.
No, it is just her. You're right. Because we laugh at Wanda.
Natasha. What's Black Widow?
Johansson.
Yeah. Look at Black Widow. I mean, they put comedy in her movie, and it's comedy at her expense a lot of times, and they make her parts funny.
But I found their movie to be. Here's the thing: I found it just as average as Captain Marvel because it was just bad storytelling. Nothing to do with the
And here's the thing about Captain Marvel. I'm sorry, one second. I don't hate Brie Larson. I hated her acting in that. There were parts of Captain Marvel that I actually liked. I love female empowerment movies, even if they're way over the top, like making her into kind of like Marvel's equivalent of Superman. I'm fine with that, but have some kind of arc, have some kind of progression. Tell me why I should care at all about her, and they didn't do that. Go ahead, Shae.
So this is the thing that probably pisses me off the most about female empowerment movies, right? As a fucking female, as someone who has lived my entire life as a woman, right?
I have a few years.
But I've literally, so I have grown up as a girl. I have been condescended to. I've been mansplained to. I have had people say horrible, mean, terrible things to me. Again, I go back to words only hurt if you let them. But me as a woman watching female empowerment movies that are coming out now, it is so fucking offensive. It is so offensive. Because everything that they do is like, oh, the poor girl needs a win. Let's give her a win. Like, fuck you. How about this? Why are we not outraged at the fact that whenever it comes to putting a woman in a movie, we can't seem to get the writing to not suck ass? How about that? That's what I'm pissed about. I want to have the same level of professionalism and thought and development and plot and all of the things that you would put in any other movie that would be expected if you had a male lead. If you were going to put fucking Leo DiCaprio in something, you were going to put Matt Damon, you were going to put some male in that role, that male would demand this level of writing, and you can't even give that to women. That is what pisses me off. It has nothing to do with we don't have women that are strong and powerful. It has to do with why can't we write good fucking stories where women do fail?
If I can for a second, I know Sai has a critique, but I have a thing to come back to it, and we'll come back to that. But I have 3 words for you: Alien versus Predator.
Exactly.
Because that was written in a time prior to all this when we had a woman of color and a lead. And she kicked ass, and she made mistakes, but she was also the intelligent one. She was the skilled climber and expert, but also screwed up. But it was also filmed as a horror movie, which like I said in the past, horror movies are no different than any other movie. You have a lead character who's your Frodo, who is naive and doesn't understand something, has to cross a threshold, and has to learn by the end how to defeat the bad guy. And it's no different than anything else, but they're typically females because we empathize with the female movement of being afraid. Because if you put a guy in a horror movie, you're like, and quit being a bitch.
Well, I mean, look at what? God, what was the one Arnold was in? Predator, just Predator. Yeah, I mean, you're like, well, kick his ass. He's not that much bigger than you. Come on, shake it off.
Well, see that, and that's the thing is like when you talk about strong female leads, how long does it take before that gets mentioned? It takes a while because they go through all these other horrible pandering tokenizing roles before you finally go, no, we used to have strong female leads.
As the token straight white dude, I'm gonna,
I appreciate that.
as the token straight white dude, I think it comes down to, and this is just my opinion as a writer more than anything else, if someone is just writing a story that has got a cool female, dope. If you're writing a story to emphasize the cool female, it feels more like, don't worry, sister, we got your back. We got you on this. You're doing it for someone else as opposed to just writing the story. And when you're writing it as is, if you're writing something to put it on a pedestal, expect criticism. Really expect criticism. Because if you're putting something on, like, I'm doing this for emphasis, I'm putting it on a plinth, I am going to gild it and throw fairy dust on it and make you go, wow. Expect a lot of criticism.
Absolutely.
Well, it's like when you
like me.
When you set out to write a female Ghostbusters instead of just setting out to write a Ghostbusters reboot and the characters happen to be female.
That's it.
Yeah, which is what it should be.
I want really quickly back to critiquing Woman King. Every critique about the Woman King is this racist, misogynist diatribe.
You mean a queen? You mean a queen?
Well, whatever. I really don't care either way.
Fun at the Woman King, the fucking queen, but whatever.
My point isn't that a Disney movie? I think it is.
No idea.
It could be.
So I don't want to get Eric in trouble with his corporate overlords, but let me just say,
you're back right now.
Let me just say that learn that if you're going to make a dramatized historical thing, learn the history. Learn the history before you decide who you're going to make your hero. But you can't even point that out without being, racist fuck.
I'm gonna say nope on that. And here's why.
There's so many Disney movies that
not follow. Braveheart is so historically inaccurate.
Oh, yeah.
No. I don't mean the historical inaccuracy part about it. I mean, if you're going to glorify William Wallace, and then William Wallace was actually the villain.
He kind of was.
Well, you can argue that both ways. You can't really argue this both ways.
Oh, no. I understand. Like they're pointing out a certain act of how the Woman King fought back, et cetera, et cetera. What they don't point out is the fact that tribe helped sell off other people of color or slave.
They were fighting back against ending slavery. Is right. What they were fighting back against.
Well, I think that all of this goes back to things that we've talked about before when we're talking about storytelling. If you notice that the entire reason of your story is centered around somebody's race or sex or sexual preference or any of the various tokenizing reasons, unless you are telling a story that is specifically tied to something like that, you're probably focusing on the wrong fucking thing. What you should be, like, you can very easily have a gay black man as your lead and not have to be like, OMG, he's so gay, and did you know he was black, and he came from this family that had all of these slaves that had to fight back against that old whitey dude, or what. Like, you don't have to go there. He can just be a good written character who happens to be gay and black, and that's that.
If I can play the devil's advocate for a second, because I tend to do that.
You always do, so go ahead.
I tend to do. And it's one of those, like I said, I've always been adjacent to a lot of these causes. But I don't try to like prop them up because I'm not doing it to like fill my own virtue bank. I don't get benefits for that. I will say that, for, the bulk of my lifetime, the majority of the stories told from, in my youth, it's always been Greek and westernized and white dudes and straight white dudes and fewer and fewer, like, except for horror movies like we talked about. So understanding that people want to like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you had, a gay black man as your protagonist or a bisexual female? Oh, it doesn't matter. 100% fine. I think it's one of those, like, when we come across from the argument against that argument of yours is, you can be there, just don't be so in your face about it. And that's the kind of thing, the same argument people had as gay people when I was a kid growing up. It's like, I don't care if they're gay. Could they just be a little less gay? And that is very hurtful.
I'm not even saying that.
No, I'm not saying that you are. I'm not saying that you are.
Don't make that their personality trait. Because
right.
it isn't.
But what I'm saying is, what I'm saying is look to things that do succeed and use that as your model. I don't know if you've recently watched it on Netflix, but it's called Uncoupled. And it is a Neil Patrick Harris. It's a 8-episode sitcom. He's fantastic. Well, the story, the gist of it is he's 47 and his partner is 50. And on his partner's 50th birthday, he's a surprise party. The partner leaves him because they've been together for the last 17 years. And so since he was 30, they've been together. And he's like, I can't anymore. I just have to move on. I have to do other things. So Neil Patrick Harris is like now middle-aged, gay, and in New York trying to live his life again. He doesn't know. He's got his best friends. And it's a predominantly gay cast. But the gay aspect does not... some people say it's just about being gay. It's not. He's trying to date again, and then like the person's too clingy or too nice, or maybe they're too perfect, but it's too soon after the breakup and they can't deal with that. And it's everything that is romantically involved, regardless of your orientation, that we've all had these same emotions. It's just through the lens of a gay man going through these things. And by doing that, by making like his sexuality is a big part of the show, but it's not what it's about. It's about a person learning to love again. And so you can have those things, but tell a real story in there.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't have...
I'm not saying that you said that.
I know, but I'm
the pushback.
I'm not saying don't have...
Why would you say that, Shae?
A black man, I know.
Oh my God, you can't have a black... Oh my God, Shae, you can't say that. You better edit that shit out.
Holy shit.
Technical difficulties. I
hate this channel.
Blah, blah, blah.
No, so that's the thing though, is like people are people. There's so much more to them than being, gay or straight, black, white, like fucking purple, rainbow. I don't give a shit, right? We have things that make us human, and if you are writing a character and the only thing that you have about them is a demographic, you have a shitty character. I don't care what that demographic is. If all you've written are demographics, you're tokenizing people and it's bullshit. And that is my blanket criticism across the board.
I've been
Write
thinking
interesting
about what
fucking
Syed
characters.
I've been thinking about what Syed said a few minutes ago, which is like they build that in to deflect criticism.
They do.
I mean, they build that in to deflect from criticism of poor writing. And I thought like, wow, that's a mind-bending concept where they go, we really don't have a very strong foundational thing here, which is like a script, an actual character building, an actual plot. And you go like, oh, but we have these things that we've checked off, and therefore if you don't like it, it must be because you are an awful human being, rather than going, actually, maybe there is something to be said about this doesn't make any sense, and your characters, your actors' performances are over the top. Your characters don't make any sense. This act 1 through 3 structure doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't hold water. Put under like that level of objective lens of criticism. Like I'm incredibly naive. Clearly,
isn't it abhorrent?
Yeah, it's pretty gross if it's actually true,
And you can look at it, it's not an absolute. So, I mean, the worse something is, the more it's going to rely on that. But I mean, you can build that in and still think you have a halfway decent product. But if anyone comes out and criticizes it, you can still throw them under the bus that way. Go ahead, Shae.
So the way that you can tell is pay attention to what the criticisms are of various things. Because I've seen people who were like, I watched this and I was actually very underwhelmed. I saw the main character. I was expecting a little bit more. Nothing really happened with them. They never really seemed to grow or blossom. And all of the comments immediately off of that were, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're like just flat down, like, go kill yourself. You shouldn't even be here. Kind of like really vicious, vile responses to a legitimate criticism. Like, this isn't somebody... I've seen people who've said absolutely nothing about the demographics of whatever, but have talked about the story, the plot, the pacing, and have been torn to shreds by rabid sheep, just like Gib was talking about. There's a lot of people that are waiting to have someone tell them what their opinion is. There are a lot of people out there that are uncomfortable with making their own call. that are worried about making the wrong call and that are waiting for somebody to tell them what the correct thing to think and say is. And once those people have been given that opinion, they are rabid with it. They will go any and everywhere and just regurgitate it as many times as possible.
Unless they're Eric Canete. He can say anything and people will go, God damn, that was well said. Like you put up the no, you did on Twitter the other day. Was it last night or the night before? You retweeted someone about the AI teaching a certain art style.
Oh my gosh, that was such a good tweet, Eric. Thank you.
But all the subsequent comments were like, "Man, you are the most well-spoken." I could never have said something like as scathing, as
everyone
polite
else
as you
was
did.
seething, and you're over here like your timing is beyond atrocious, and
Beyond
it was
the pale,
like.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, such a good way to
let
put
them
it.
come to this show and just let them hear me go like, oh, those going on against them. I completely canceled out that fucking tape. Yeah, it's. I think. Let me go back to my comment. It starts to become more. The more I think about it, I'm like, oh, there's some movies or there's some events out there that lead with the shield, and one of the ones that come to mind was Charlie's Angels, right? And I go like, oh, that might prove what Sai is talking about as correct, because they must have known based on their audiences that wasn't all that good. So they opened with, what did they say? There was something like, they were criticizing the fact that this movie isn't for men, it's for women.
Right. It's not for you is one of the common things. Yeah.
They opened with that, and I go like, isn't it like you guys haven't opened this movie yet? You know, like this hasn't premiered. This hasn't hit the like major theaters. It has limited release. And then fast forward later on, they were like, the reason why this movie didn't do so well is because men didn't show up. I'm like, you guys led with that. That's a weird concept to me in Hollywood. Again, me coming from a completely naive perspective.
Yeah, don't have your audience before you're out of the gate.
What's her name? The director actress who did that movie. She also Elizabeth Banks. There was a video article that's going around basically just highlighting exactly what you said. That like at the time when it was prior to release and the hype and the lead up, this is an empower movie, this is this movie, this movie, this movie, this and then after it kind of crashed and burned, the latest thing was like I didn't expect this. I didn't expect Men Not to Go. Blah blah blah. I didn't write it for just one group. And it's like kind of like going back against everything that was led up prior. Unfortunately, the internet has a long memory and deep reserves of, oh no, this is exactly what you said because here's the article, here's the quote, here's what it said in Variety. So if you're mad, get mad at Variety for quoting you. So which is it? And it's people can't wait to say add the ist on the end of something, whatever the ist happens to be, or that thing is woke and dismiss it. And it's both are invalid criticisms. To bring it back to what we talked about, like if you want to criticize, make sure your criticism is valid. If something like, you don't have to be skilled in criticism. You don't have to say like, well, the structure falls apart. You're like, it didn't appeal to me because I felt like the character was unrelatable, or the characters didn't do this, or like there was a 30-minute scene in the middle where they were talking about lunch, like every Tolkien book ever. Like those are, you can dismiss those. You can say that's valid criticism. You can't dismiss that. But when you jump straight into the ists.
Do you think that's where people are coming from to the point of our stream today, which is, is that why the gatekeeping comes in? Like, are you like people who are only allowed to, like, what's the qualifier? Is it because they're speaking in fancy words? Is it because they have history with that thing? Is it because they've written X amount of novels and therefore that gives them the magic key to get through the gate? I don't understand.
No, the magic key is whether or not you're willing to fawn all over something.
Oh, interesting.
What I was gonna say is I feel like people are taking this the wrong way when it comes to who you should be listening to for criticism. That is up to each individual creator. That is not a blanket statement for every single person who is going to criticize. If, for example, I've got my writing, right? I let my mom read it. My mom gushes on how great it is. I'm going to take that with a grain of salt because she's my mom, right? She's my mom. She's probably going to be a lot more forgiving. She also isn't a writer. I'm also doing something that she doesn't feel that she could really sit down and do. And so for her, this is like magic. Like, I just sat down and wrote something and it spoke to her and wow, magic happened, you know? So that puts her criticism in a specific lane. Now, if my mom comes back and says something is terrible, knowing that that's my mom who's probably giving me all of the allowances in the world and she says it's bad, it's probably bad.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
But that's the value that I put on it, because I know that my mom respects me enough to be honest, but I also know that she's my biggest cheerleader. Now, if I were to give a piece of artwork to Eric, as I have done, and ask for criticism, and Eric comes back and says, the next step in you working on your craft, I think, would be focusing on this, I take that with very high regard, because I know Eric is an artist that I respect and adore. I know how talented he is. And I know that if I'm giving something over to Eric and Eric says, it is a good base, it is good bones, here's how you can improve, it's not saying this is shit and garbage, because if it was shit and garbage, Eric could be like, let's go back to basics. Let's talk about form and
how
the
are you
basic
holding
shape of
your
a human
pencil?
head. Right. Like, but
Is it in your hand?
Instead,
Let me ask this. If I'm understanding it, is what you're suggesting that people don't have the mechanism to partition criticism correctly? Is that what it is? Like, and so they're only looking for a certain kind, or okay.
Yes. So the thing is they take everything and they go, well, what have you written? And it's like, it doesn't matter what they've written. If they've never written anything, how much have they consumed? Like, a perfect way to look at this, I'm in marketing right now, right? What we're talking about, where people talk about who is allowed to criticize, is one of the biggest pitfalls every marketing company has had to face at some point, where you think you know your audience, but you don't get to know your audience because that's who you want it to be, or because that's who you feel you've written it for, because your audience is who's shown up, which is not always the same. Ask Gib. Gib has my most favorite book series that he does is his favorite to write and his least popular. And it's insane to me, because I'm like, but it's so good. But it depends on the audience that shows up, right? So you can write something and be like, my intent is to reach this audience. But if that is the only audience that you are focused on, and all these other people are consuming it and giving you feedback, and you're shitting on all of them because you're focused on this one audience, you have just destroyed any momentum that you have, because now this audience is seeing what you've done over here and is already probably turned off to it. But in marketing, you take all of the opinions. You take everyone's opinion, right? And then you rack and stack it based on value. And you go, okay, my product that I'm putting out is doing really, really poorly with men 55 and over. So maybe that isn't who I try to market to. So rather than try to grab this group over here who seems disinterested entirely, I either have to completely change what my offering is, or change what my market audience is, because that clearly isn't it.
Are we then reflecting that comment back to the person who posted it on Twitter? And by the way, if we're ever low on like subject matter, Twitter is the way to go. But
right.
I think are we reflecting that back to them and saying, like, rather talk about like who's allowed? Are we saying that maybe you should be more aware of like who you whose input you're sort of like really taking to heart? Is that what we're suggesting? Like, that's
what I would suggest. I suggest, because opinions are like assholes. Everyone has them and they all stink, right? That's everyone's favorite saying. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what Joe Blow 69's opinion of my writing was on the internet if I'm literally never going to, I don't know this person, I don't interact with this person, but if I've got the majority of my fan base who's saying that they think that it was a misstep in something that I've done, that those are opinions that I value a hell of a lot more than some rando who just decided that they wanted to say everything sucked. Okay, I'm sorry it sucked for you. I hope that you have a better time. Maybe you'll find something better that you like that I've done, or maybe you'll find a better creator than me.
the hot button has got to be that word allowed. You know, the
Allowed
part
is what got
really
me.
is.
That's what pissed me off.
Well, and that directly feeds into the not for you kind of thing. So let me just throw this out there as kind of a filter, if you will. If you are in a position to market your product, right? So we're talking about independent creators and we're talking about big companies. Then everyone who consumes your marketing has a right to comment on your product.
And you should welcome it.
Because
you should be welcoming all of those opinions, because that's what helps you narrow down who you have to market to.
And then really quickly, and then adjust how deeply or superficially you're going to take that criticism based on the fact that they have just seen your marketing. Like, maybe it's a movie that hasn't come out yet, or what have you. Maybe it's a book that you're trying to sell them that they obviously haven't read yet. Okay, all they can see is whatever blurb you put out, whatever art you put out, that kind of thing. So don't take it as a critique of your book or your comic or your movie. Take it as a critique of your trailer. Take it as a critique of your Indiegogo page. This is what I'm presenting. And this is the feedback I'm getting based on what I'm presenting, not the finished work, but what I have put into the universe, right? And so it's the same respect I think that people should give when people are commenting about, you know, movies like Ghostbusters 2016 when they obviously haven't seen the film yet. Maybe they'll never see it just based on your marketing, but this is what the marketing shows me about your movie, right?
Yeah.
And address that. And if need be, address that with your marketing people. Hey, this is the impression we're giving people. Why don't we fucking adjust it a little bit so that this stops being the opinion that we're, you know, stops being the perception. Right, exactly.
Or it might be clear. This
might be exactly what we were looking for.
Exactly. I was going to say it could flip the other way, which is like, this is exactly what we're looking for.
Well, and they're quick to acknowledge that to their marketing people, because you see that in the industry on the back end all the time. You know, when people knock it out of the park with a trailer or something like that, they get praise out the ass for having, you know, done it. And even to the point where when your trailer is misleading and turns, you know, a really shit movie into this pile of gold that everyone rushes out to see, and then the movie's nothing like the fucking trailer. I mean, there are certain people who appreciate the fact that trailers can be that well, I guess, twisted, manipulated, what have you. But back kind of to the point, understand what people are really commenting on. Okay, if they haven't seen your shit, they're not commenting on your shit. They're commenting on the picture that you just put out about your shit.
Don't take criticism as a personal attack on you as a human being. I mean, I cannot like your writing and like you as a person. It is a thing that can happen. I understand that, especially when you're writing or you're creating art and you're putting a lot of yourself into it, and then somebody comes back and says this is shit. That can hurt, because you're like, oh, that was so much of me, and now they're saying it's garbage. But you need to take a step back from it. Stop treating everything so precious, and look at the fact that, okay, do I agree? Do I think this is shit? You know, and if I don't agree, then I understand that people are going to say that it is, and I don't agree with that, and then move on with your life. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to agree with everything that everyone says. You don't have to take everybody's opinion as law. But if you are constantly gatekeeping who is allowed to comment on things, you are never going to grow as an artist, as a writer, as a creator, as a marketer, because you are willingly contributing to a bias that you already have and refusing to allow any other opinion in. If you never hear other opinions, you can't possibly know what's out there. And that's why I go back to, I understand art is subjective. So is writing in a lot of cases. A lot of writing is subjective. Just because we all take English class does not mean that writing a novel is any less an art form than painting a picture. There's people who do it well. There's people who do it terribly. There's people who do really abstract stuff, Like I cannot stand Emily Dickinson's poetry. Drives me up a wall. It is the most like disjointed poems that I've ever read in my life. It's like being in a fever dream, right? She's considered a fucking a classic. And I can't stand her writing. It doesn't mean her writing is bad. It means it's not my kind of writing.
Yeah.
Right?
And the thing is that shouldn't be weaponized against you, right? Like just in general.
Never.
Yeah.
Because that's the point of being an art form, is that there is an audience somewhere. Now, it may not be the audience that you hoped to get. It may not be as big as you wanted it to be, but that's part of the art form side of things. And trying to tell people that they can't have an opinion on something because it hurts your fifis is stupid. If you're an artist, as an artist, I welcome other artists to come in and critique my work. Please, for the love of all that is holy, critique my work. Because there's a lot of artists that I look at and I see certain things in their art and I'm like, this would be really, really great if only they paid better attention to the anatomy of how this arm is bending, because that is throwing it off and drawing my eye, and it shouldn't be based on the composition. But if nobody ever says that to you, you are not going to pick up on it, or it might take years before you do. How are you going to grow as an artist? And that could be a really simple fix, but because I'm not allowed to say it because it's poor taste and it's bad and it makes people feel bad, so artists are trying to say that they're above getting critiques. I don't agree. I think that everyone should welcome critiques, and you need to choose where you put the value.
And I think, and I don't know if all of you believe in this, I think the moment you release something out into the world for whatever version of consumption, you open yourself up to critique anyway.
You do,
right?
Yeah.
So, good or bad.
If you don't want critique, then keep it.
Keep it, right?
Yep.
Just keep it. Don't let anybody see it, right? But the moment you put it out there, I don't know about the who's allowed to critique. Now, I have a small little anecdote, and it's me showing my sort of like overly sensitive side. But I showed a bunch of my storyboards from way back in the day. And the thing that I was celebrating primarily was the fact that through storyboarding, I'd gotten faster as an illustrator when it comes to my comic book work. Really happy about that, because storyboards, generally, you don't give a shit. Not because the work isn't good, but because it's going to have to go through the filter of a director. And if you fall in love with your shots, you end up, doing a disservice to the whole entire process of, hey, I have to go with the direction that my director wants me to go. I can fight for a shot, but it doesn't mean that the shot ends up in the show, right? So I was pretty happy with the idea that that's the mechanism that I built, was like, I've got to get through as many of these panels as possible because I know, and that built to help build out my speed. Somebody pushed back on that, said, look at this guy who celebrates I think the core of it, this isn't verbatim, the core of it was like, he's celebrating the fact that he's being overworked by these major companies and taking advantage of his time and blah blah blah, right? Just basically losing track of the idea that, like, hey, I'm celebrating the fact that I got fast, and going instead going down the fact that's like, oh, here's another guy, here's another boomer that, like, who celebrates the fact that he got fucking overworked by a company and blah 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 blah. And I struck back at that guy, and I thought about it for weeks, not the fact that I struck back, but I was like, why was I so sensitive at that idea? Like, why was that so precious to me, at the idea that this guy's like, was I being overworked? Was there a hint of truth? The
vast majority of the time, it's because you're trying to deflect against the fact that I was thinking
that gave me food for thought, right?
Yeah.
And so now I put myself in this situation of, like, these guys who make these movies that are getting beat up left and right, and go like, I wonder why they're fighting back so hard at this concept of, that's a really bad thing that you did. Is it because you knew that it was bad and you released it anyway, and because you couldn't do anything about it? Or, you know what I mean? Like, that's where my brain goes. So every time that you guys introduce, like, I'm going down this, like, every time I look off, right? I'm like, all right, that's one more thing I just listened to, and I need to think about that for like 2 minutes because blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's got neither here nor there. I just think about, like, that's why I didn't have much to contribute in this particular episode, because, like, hey, that's fascinating. I never thought of it from that perspective. So,
well, and I think for a lot of people, as it just turns into, when you do fire back, it's because a nerve was struck somewhere. So either you like, there's people who are super confident, or at least appear to be, about things that they write, and then when somebody criticizes them, they're like, well, who the fuck are you? And it's like, did I touch a nerve?
Yeah.
Did I touch a nerve in the fact that I said that I thought it was kind of plain and basic, and now you're upset? And it's like, I'm not saying you're plain or basic. I'm saying that the specific thing that you put out that I read, I didn't like.
Yeah.
And like that, I've got that with a lot of. We've been warned, because Cy and I were talking about starting reviews of all of these indie comics, because I have over 400 backings on Indiegogo at this point. I know it's a
That's
problem. It is a lot. It is a whole lot. It's way. I know one person
like,
who has
one
more
a
than
day
me.
for a year, you guys still have more than enough material.
And
I mean,
like
we've been doing
80
it
on
for 3 years,
Kickstarter.
but
So
it's 73.
That-
But yeah. Anyway,
Eric's just saying we have a backlog that we can work through.
That's
we
what I
do.
mean.
Well, so this is the thing is, I've actually had people who were like, I'd be very careful doing reviews of these, and I was like, you know what?
Why?
For the longest time, we avoided it because I didn't want people coming at me, and then I finally hit this point where I was like, you know what? Fuck this shit, because do you know how many of these things that I have backed and then I've read and I've been
That's
like,
the qualifier.
That's
the
terrible.
qualifier.
Well,
In
and
my
that's
opinion,
the thing,
that's
is
the
it's like,
qualifier.
you can take or leave my opinion, and I'm more than happy for people to take or leave my opinion, but I'm a writer, an editor. I've got a YouTube channel. I've backed over 400 fucking comics.
Sure.
I feel like I have some realm in this whole shtick to be able to say what I think.
Well,
and
here's the thing,
This
Shae.
goes back
I'm
to
a
your point.
consumer.
Go, sorry. Go ahead, Si.
No, and we had this discussion. We're like, well, do we reach out to the people who made this book and ask for their permission to review it? And I'm like,
What?
no, let's not do that, because you know what? I didn't get into this to fluff the creator. You know, I didn't get into this to give anyone a hand job. I got into this because I wanted to be a consumer of these things. I wanted to highlight the things that I liked, that I enjoyed.
Yep.
And if I, or by extension Shae, if we put our money into this stuff and it's not of the quality that we enjoy, if it's not what we expected when we back these things, people deserve to know that.
Yeah. Well,
If they're going to tune into me to listen, first of all, to listen to the critique, but second of all, to have listened to me promote the fucking book, because we don't back a whole lot of things that we don't have on the show. I mean, there's a high percentage of things that we have on the show that we back.
400 some odd. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we have a well over 300 Red Valkyrie presents. So we've had. Yeah, it's been a lot. And you know, I'm gonna take this
to
one
Sai's
step
point.
further.
One thing I want to say, like to Sai, and to your point, actually, the moment you say, "Hey, I back this thing and I have an opinion about it," doesn't this go back to our the point of this in
Who
this
deserves?
episode, which is like, what the heck does who deserve? And like, they got it. They bought the book. They want to be able to talk about it. The niceties are an added feature. Yep. But it's not a built-in, you know, like if they don't like it, then they're allowed to say that they don't like it. It's like, I don't know.
And that's the thing is, for the longest time I was worried because people were like, but you could hurt a campaign. I was like, if people want to put that much value in my opinion, then great. But I am not going to. A mom can blog from home about what she thinks about various fucking products and shit that she gets from, you know, companies as a sponsor or whatever. She can blog and give her opinion on those things. I have paid for these comics. I have a right to read them and give an honest review.
I don't give a fuck if I pirated them. I have a right to give a review.
I'm a consumer. I'm a living, breathing human human being with
If
an
I
opinion.
knifed someone in an alley and stole their
stole it,
copy
damn,
of Arc
Sai.
Athena, I deserve to
harsh.
give my
That's
feedback
harsh.
about Arc
A
Athena.
little, babe,
First of all, respect to a guy who's just randomly walking down the alley that you're stalking, and he's got a copy of Arc Athena.
How about
on
respect
him.
to me for wanting it badly enough that I just knifed a guy in an alley
babe.
for it?
I'm into it.
It's okay. We've got 2 copies. You
Well,
think
we
I don't
do now.
back I back Arc
You're
Athena
gonna have
heavily.
3 after Size knifes this guy.
Exactly.
I know. That one's gonna blood. That'll be the reader copy. It'll be covered in blood.
No, but my yeah, my
Well,
point
you guys are
is,
thinking about it. Like, he bought the knife. He bought the sneaking shoes to sneak up on this person, targeted
sneaking
them.
shoes.
Sneaking shoes.
Yeah, you know
The British
time
countryside. He's got driving
to
gloves and sneaking shoes.
yeah,
and then
Smoking
the
jacket.
The time spent to stalk this one individual to the point you know that they
okay.
have
There's
the
more
comic
than
and that
one
they're transferring-
individual with Arc Athena. I mean, let's not
I'm
insult
just-
Eric.
This specific.
No.
guy.
Like, listen, it's got to be
Wow.
you're tracking down this Florida man because that's where you're at. So you have to find someone in Florida. So you've singled them out to the point. Like, I'm looking at the time spent. You could have just like done something and just bought the fucking thing. Just, like, no, you want to
Nope.
murder.
But
in
where's
this case.
the
It's
No,
funny.
You
Want
want
to murder.
Where's
Murder is
the
on the
thrill in
menu.
that? Yeah.
Where's the thrill?
Arc Athena, I
Exactly.
think, comes secondary to the desire to murder.
Look,
It's
it's
a
a
Based on
win-win.
this story.
It's a
Win-win.
it's a bug, not a feature. I'll tell you this.
It's being efficient. You know, 2 birds, 1 stone.
I'm going
Two-
to pass
two-
out from laughing.
Two birds, 1 knife.
Wow. Hi, Kitty. Kitty's
And on
good
that
back
note,
there.
That's
I feel like it's a
Agatha.
good place to wrap.
Yeah.
Would you rather's?
I do, but before I get to the would you rather's, and which I have this one of my favorite quotes. Is right. I obviously we've all heard it because we've all watched the movie History of the World Part 1, and it was one of those things that reverberated in my brain. You never saw History of the World Part 1, Shae?
I don't think so.
Mel Brooks comedy from the 70s, fantastic.
No.
And it's like it's a little
I wasn't born
vignettes
yet.
throughout. Well, they have this thing called like streaming, and you can just watch it.
you were going to say VHS tapes.
You almost said
No,
VHS.
but anyway, but I own a copy on Vudu, but it's these little vignettes throughout time, you know. And one of the openings was the caveman, and it's got the scene of the caveman painting on the wall, and it says in the beginning of time first came the critic or the artist, you know, and it's narrated by Orson Welles, and the line that came afterwards was, and of course, with the birth of the artist came the inevitable afterbirth, the critic, and because this next caveman goes. Just being a tool because this guy's spending all this time
Don't
painting
like
on
it.
the wall and exactly. And the thing is like that sentiment is echoed obviously from Mel Brooks, one of the comedy classic kings of all time, to now. I mean, it doesn't change. There will always be someone who doesn't like it for reasons, and you have to accept that sometimes those reasons are logical and sometimes those reasons are completely illogical.
Very
It just
Well
is.
said. Well said.
All right, so would you rather's? I got a new list. I found a new list, and it's like a slightly spicy list. Still 71. So start with Shae. Shae 1 through 71.
69.
Ah,
It's because Sai was gonna pick it. So.
dick. Yes.
Basic.
And then I knew you were going to pick it, and so I picked another number.
Okay.
Right.
Would you rather let Sai sleep with your best friend or sleep with
go.
Sai's best friend? He doesn't count as yourself because that's just masturbation. So
No,
I was gonna
that
say
that would be.
the best friend. That's the. I don't like this at all. 69 was a bad choice.
Regrets.
But also appropriate for this question.
Right?
So many regrets.
Either way, it's gonna end in us not together, so it's not.
So pick one. Would you rather
Sai.
let Sai sleep with your best friend, or would you rather
Sai
sleep with
my
Sai's
best friend.
Okay.
I'm going to tell her.
You're gonna tell Jesse?
Yeah.
Hey Jesse, I'd rather you sleep with Sai than me sleep with Sai's best friend, which I'm assuming would be Luke, which would be really fucking weird because he's like a brother.
You know, it would be you, and if I had to pick someone other than you, canonically, I'm going to go back to the best friend I had, you know, through my teens and 20s.
Oh, I don't
And-
want to sleep with her.
she's a heavyset lesbian, so enjoy.
Yeah, that's probably bad. No thanks. I would rather you sleep with Jesse.
I think her wife would object, but, knock yourself out.
At no point do these questions care about your fifis. Okay, Sai, you're up.
13.
13, all right.
My lucky number.
You hope.
I hope.
69 did not work out for me.
Nope, not so much.
Or
Would you rather
perfectly.
have neon fluorescent pubic hair or extra long pubic hair that hangs to your feet?
Neon fluorescent.
Neon
In a heartbeat.
fluorescent? How is that a question?
In a heartbeat.
Oh my
Not-
gosh, that would be the coolest thing ever.
Go
Drop
next,
your
Gib.
pants and have a disco.
Okay, pick me a number.
Somebody pick for Gib.
9.
9.
I'm
Speaking
stuck
of
on
numbers.
69, sorry.
You're a Nazi skinhead, I knew
Okay.
it.
Would I rather watch my parents have sex?
Oh.
Or would I rather have my parents watch me have sex?
Oh.
Oh.
I've seen one, and the other one doesn't take very long. So
It's left to us to discuss which one is which.
I'm gonna go
already
with
know.
I'm gonna go with let them watch me have sex, 'cause at least that way I still get to have sex.
Okay. Okay,
I'm
I can see the upside there, yeah.
The fact that I can perform while my mom's going, "You're doing a good job, baby. You're doing a good job."
No. You need to stimulate the clitoris more.
Oh no!
Good job, honey. Good job. Good.
Oh my gosh, Eric,
okay.
pick a number. Eric,
All
pick a
right,
number quickly.
23. 2-3.
Oh,
Just
so
Eric's reaction.
uncomfortable.
You've got Shae panting, Gib.
23. All right, let's
Yeah.
see here.
Please let it be a pubic hair joke.
No, it's going to be sweating mayonnaise again.
Oh god.
All right. Would you rather cheat on your partner and be caught, or be cheated on and never told?
Oh, that is... God, that got me right in the heart.
Oh, my armpits immediately started sweating. Say it again this time. I'll brace myself. Hold on. Go
Would
ahead.
you rather cheat
Would I
on your
rather
wife
cheat
and
on
never
my
be caught,
wife and never
or
be
be
caught?
cheated on and never be told?
No. You said cheat on your wife and get caught.
I thought
And
you
be
said
caught.
and
Yes,
get-
excuse me. Yes. Would you rather
and be
cheat on
caught.
your wife and be caught, or
Yes.
have her cheat on you and you never know about it?
Oh, the second one. Because if I did the first one, it'd be so heartbreaking. I'm still... there's still
And
a
she
part of
catches
me
you,
that's
so.
alive.
You would break your own heart.
Yeah, I would. I would.
Especially
And-
like her and your mom walk in at the same time and watch. That should just make it weirder. So.
Yeah, just don't tell me. I guess that's the one.
Cheat on me and let me never know.
That's the okay one. Yeah, that's the last sort of I have to look her in the face and she's crying.
Oh,
No, I
Jesus.
wanted to ramp these up a little bit, so I found another
These are-
list.
No,
that's-
these are
Fucking
amazing.
terrible.
These are fucking brutal, man.
Keep doing these.
Oh,
Yeah,
uncomfortable.
what a
The other ones were
downer.
too easy to answer. These ones are
right.
a lot harder to answer.
Mine was easy. I don't know what I did.
I know
right.
yours was good.
Hey,
like,
it's luck of the
fluorescent
draw.
Pubic
I mean-
hair all day long. Well, on that note, thanks everyone for watching another episode of Writing Prose. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And
Listen, the note was I'll take long pubic hair all day long. I think.
no,
that was the
fluorescent.
note.
Fluorescent.
Fluorescent.
I'll show
I don't
myself
want
out.
long. That's too much. But like short and hot pink. Okay, let's do that. Why not?
Yeah. Shae will help me groom it. It's fine.
Oh gosh. No.
Part it to the
No,
left.
that's you.
Let's try
That's you.
middle part. Middle
part.
You gotta go.
Thank you guys so much, and we will catch you all
Stick
next
curl.
time.
Bye.
Bye.